There was a time when she smiled for the world but cried when no one saw. She laughed in public but broke down in private. She was surrounded by people yet felt completely alone. She did everything to be loved, accepted, and appreciated. But no matter how hard she tried, she kept feeling empty until one day she stopped chasing the world and started seeking the one who never leaves. That was the day she found Allah. She once believed that happiness lived in the eyes of those who admired her. Every compliment became her validation, and every criticism became her wound. She dressed, spoke, and behaved in ways that others would approve of, hoping that if she could meet everyone's expectations, she would finally feel enough. But no matter how much she gave, the emptiness never left. Her heart felt hollow, her smile heavy. It was as though she was living everyone else's version of her life, except her own. She woke up each day scrolling through a world that told her what beauty looked like, what success meant, and what happiness should feel like. The noise was endless opinions, comparisons, standards, and expectations, all pulling her in different directions. The louder the world became, the quieter her heart grew. She could hear everyone's voice except her own. There were moments when she'd look at herself in the mirror and wonder, who am I becoming? The girl who once prayed with sincerity now rushed through her salah. The woman who once found peace in silence now feared being alone. She didn't even realize when her connection with her Creator began to fade. It happened slowly, hidden beneath the distractions of worldly pursuits. She thought she was chasing a dream, but in truth she was running away from herself. Every like gave her a momentary sense of worth, every new possession a brief rush of joy, but as soon as the excitement faded, the emptiness returned stronger than before. She was living for moments, not meaning. She was surrounded by people, yet her soul was starving for something deeper. And this is how she began to lose her identity, not all at once, but piece by piece. With every time she chose the world over her peace. With every moment she ignored the quiet voice in her heart reminding her to return to Allah. She tried to fill her life with noise so she wouldn't have to face the silence within. But the truth is, silence is where the soul speaks the loudest. She didn't realize that the happiness she was chasing was never lost, it was simply misplaced, buried under layers of worldly expectations. The moment she began to listen again, she'd find that her true identity was never gone. It was waiting patiently for her to turn back to the one who created her. There came a time when her heart could no longer carry the weight she had been hiding. Days turned into nights of confusion, and nights turned into hours of silent tears. She had become so good at pretending that even those closest to her didn't notice the pain behind her smile. Every time someone asked, "Are you okay?" she would answer with a quiet, "I'm fine." While inside her soul was crumbling, she felt invisible, surrounded by people, yet unseen, loved by many, yet deeply lonely. There were moments she would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how life had become so heavy. She had achieved things people envied, but her heart felt empty. She had people around her, but she still felt alone. The laughter she once enjoyed now sounded distant, and the world that once excited her now felt meaningless. She didn't understand why, but everything she once thought would make her happy now only reminded her of what she had lost: peace. It was in those quiet hours, when everyone else was asleep, that the silence around her grew unbearably loud. Every unspoken fear, every hidden wound, every unanswered question echoed in her mind. She tried to distract herself, to silence her thoughts with noise, music, and company, but nothing worked. The silence kept calling her not to destroy her, but to wake her. One night, when her heart could no longer carry the burden, she broke down. The tears came without warning, raw, uncontrollable, and sincere. She cried not because of one thing, but because of everything. She cried for the little girl she used to be, the woman she had become, and the soul that longed to return home. That night, she didn't ask for the world to understand her. She just wanted peace, and in that moment of vulnerability, something within her shifted. She realized that no one could hear her pain except the one who gave her heart its voice. The silence that once terrified her became the place where she finally listened not to the world, but to her soul. For the first time, she understood that the breaking point wasn't her end. It was her heart's way of whispering, "It's time to return to Allah." In the depth of her despair, She finally reached a point where she could no longer carry the weight of her own struggles. Every attempt to control her life, to fix what was broken, to make sense of her pain had failed. She had prayed in the past out of routine, recited words she barely felt, and sought comfort in fleeting distractions. But now, stripped of pretense, she fell to her knees not out of obligation, but out of desperation. She surrendered not to a ritual, but to a reality she could no longer deny, that she needed Allah and she needed Him completely. She did not raise her voice, nor did she ask for an audience. There were no grand declarations, only the quiet surrender of a heart that had finally accepted its limitations. She whispered words that had been trapped in her soul for years. Ya Allah, I am lost, I am tired, I am nothing without you. And for the first time in a long time she truly meant it. There was no pride in her words, no hesitation, no fear of showing weakness. She realized that weakness was not shameful. The real weakness was pretending to be strong while her heart was breaking inside. As she remained in that state of humility, something miraculous began to happen. Her chest, so heavy with anxiety and fear, began to feel lighter. The turmoil that had kept her restless seemed to settle, if only slightly, as if her soul was remembering the one who had never forgotten her. She felt a warmth, a quiet reassurance, a gentle presence that said, I am here, you are not alone, I will guide you. This surrender was not an instant transformation, nor was it the end of her struggles. But it was the beginning of a new path. In that act of letting go, she released the need to control everything, the need to seek validation from people, the need to run from herself. She handed all her worries, fears, and doubts to Allah, and for the first time she experienced a sense of relief she had never known. In that moment, she understood that true strength was not in holding on tightly, but in letting go completely. True courage was not in solving every problem on her own, but in trusting the one who never errs. And true peace was not in escaping hardship, but in allowing Allah to carry the weight she could no longer bear. That night, in the quiet of her surrender, she discovered the beginning of her healing, and the start of a journey back to the self. She had lost a self rooted not in the world, but in her Creator. As she began to turn her heart toward Allah, she discovered a peace she had never known, a calm that could not be bought or borrowed, a contentment that no worldly pleasure could provide. The very things that had once left her restless, the endless pursuit of approval, the comparisons, the distractions began to lose their grip. Slowly, she learned that true satisfaction comes not from what the world gives, but from what Allah grants. Each prayer became more than a routine. It became a conversation, a safe place where she could be completely honest with her Creator. She started to find beauty in the simplicity of life. The rising sun reminded her of Allah's mercy. Each gentle breeze whispered His presence, and the quiet moments between breaths became opportunities to reconnect with the one who knows her heart better than she knows herself. She realized that her soul had been craving this connection all along, the reassurance that someone greater than herself was watching over her, guiding her, and listening to her every plea. Her gratitude grew even in the smallest moments. She noticed the blessings she had overlooked: her health, her family, the roof over her head, and the ability to draw breath. Each prayer became a reminder that Allah's wisdom is greater than her understanding, that every hardship carries a lesson, and that even in her struggles she was never truly alone. The peace she once thought impossible now became her companion, replacing fear with trust and anxiety with hope. Slowly, her heart healed from the wounds inflicted by comparison and self-doubt. She stopped seeking validation from people because she realized that the approval of Allah was all that mattered. She no longer feared loneliness because she understood that being alone with Allah is never truly being alone. Her nights of tears transformed into nights of reflection and quiet dhikr, where her soul felt nourished and her spirit rejuvenated. Faith became the anchor that steadied her amidst life's storms. The very trials that had once seemed unbearable now reminded her of Allah's plan, and each setback became an opportunity to grow closer to Him. The chaos of the world no longer dictated her emotions. Instead, her heart responded with patience, trust, and surrender. Through faith, she discovered that the truest form of peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of Allah in every moment, the constant reassurance that she is loved, guided, and protected. And in that rediscovery, she finally felt whole again, no longer lost, but rooted firmly in the love and mercy of her Creator. As she continued on her journey, she realized that surrender alone was not enough. She needed to place her trust fully in Allah. Trusting Allah meant letting go of the constant worry, the endless overthinking, and the desire to control every outcome in her life. It was terrifying at first to release her grip on the future and acknowledge that she did not hold the answers. But slowly, she began to understand that true freedom comes when you stop trying to carry the weight that only Allah can bear. She learned to view life differently. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every disappointment was no longer a source of despair, but a sign that Allah's plan was greater than hers. The very situations that once made her anxious became reminders to trust His timing. She realized that the moments she thought were failures were actually lessons, carefully placed to teach her patience, humility, and reliance on Him. With every test, she felt her heart growing stronger, her spirit more resilient. The transformation was subtle but powerful. She stopped chasing people's approval, comparing herself to others, or worrying about what might happen tomorrow. Instead, she focused on what she could control, her connection with Allah, her intentions, and her efforts. And in doing so, she discovered a freedom she had never experienced before, a freedom rooted in the knowledge that Allah's wisdom surpasses her understanding, and His mercy is greater than any mistake she could make. She also realized that trust requires action. It is not passive. It is living each day with sincerity while leaving the outcomes to Allah. She prayed more sincerely, acted with integrity, and faced her fears with courage. She discovered that the more she trusted Allah, the lighter her heart felt, even when life's storms continued. Anxiety, once a constant companion, began to fade, replaced by calmness, hope, and clarity. Slowly, the woman who once felt lost began to feel whole. Her pain no longer controlled her, but guided her toward growth. Her tears, once a symbol of weakness, became a testimony of resilience and faith. She learned that life does not become easy, but when she placed her trust in Allah, she could navigate its challenges with patience, peace, and confidence. In letting go of control and fully relying on Him, she discovered that the trials she once feared were actually the very instruments through which Allah strengthened her, prepared her, and illuminated the path back to herself. Through this trust, she became unshakable, not because life was perfect, but because her heart rested in the certainty that Allah's wisdom and love would never fail her. Over time, she began to notice a change within herself, subtle at first, but undeniable. The woman, who had once been lost, confused, and overwhelmed, was gradually emerging from the shadows of her own struggles. She no longer measured her worth by others' opinions or sought happiness in fleeting approvals. Instead, she measured it by the sincerity of her heart, the purity of her intentions, and the closeness she felt to Allah. The transformation was not instant, nor was it without struggle, but it was real, and it was profound. She began to embrace her true self, the one that had always existed beneath the layers of doubt, fear, and societal expectations. The identity that had been buried under worry, comparison, and the need for validation was finally surfacing, nourished by faith, prayer, and reflection. Every act of worship, every moment of patience, every tear shed in sincere prayer contributed to the rebuilding of her soul. She realized that who she was meant to be was never defined by the world, but by her Creator. Her confidence grew not from pride, but from the deep understanding that Allah had fashioned her with intention and care. She no longer feared being alone because she knew that being with Allah was enough. She no longer sought to fit into molds designed by society, because she had discovered the freedom of living in alignment with her values, her beliefs, and her purpose. She was no longer chasing dreams that belonged to someone else. She was pursuing the path that Allah had set for her, and it was uniquely hers. The woman who once doubted herself now moved with a quiet strength. Her heart, once heavy with fear and anxiety, now carried hope and clarity. She smiled not to impress the world, but because her soul was at peace. She faced challenges with patience, embraced setbacks as lessons, and treated herself with the compassion she had once reserved for others. She learned that her worth was not determined by success, possessions, or recognition, but by her connection with Allah and her efforts to live with sincerity, humility, and gratitude. In finding Allah, she found her true identity. In surrendering, she discovered strength, and in trusting, she uncovered purpose. She became who she was meant to be, not defined by the world, not shaped by fear or doubt, but molded by faith, resilience, and divine guidance. Every part of her journey, every tear, every trial, and every moment of reflection had led her to this point. She was no longer lost. She was whole, radiant, and alive in the way she was always intended to be. So, to every soul listening today, remember this. Sometimes life may take you to a place where you feel completely lost, broken by the world, exhausted by your own struggles, and unsure of who you are. You may have tried everything to fill the emptiness, only to realize that nothing and no one can replace what is truly missing in your heart. But take comfort in this. The moment you turn to Allah, the one who knows you better than you know yourself, everything begins to change. In your surrender, you find strength. In your trust, you find peace. And in His remembrance, you find your true self. The woman who once wandered, searching for meaning, discovered that she was never truly lost. She was being guided back to her Creator. And when she finally found Allah, she found the most beautiful version of herself, whole, resilient, confident, and at peace. So if you feel lost today, do not despair. Let your heart call out to Allah. Let your soul surrender. Let your trust grow. And watch how He transforms your pain into purpose, your tears into gratitude, and your journey into a beautiful return to yourself. Because the greatest discovery in life is not in finding yourself in the world, but in finding yourself in Allah, and through Him, becoming exactly who you were always meant to be.